Hey vinyl community, good morning. This is sort of a spur of the moment video, but what got the creative juices flowing was I was watching a documentary about Blue Note Records, specifically what went into making the iconic album covers that we all know and love. Reed Miles cover designs, Alfred Lyons photos, etc. And it got me thinking, what are some of my favorite album covers specifically from the jazz world? Before I moved up to Colorado, when I was still living in North Texas, I was a graphic design artist. And a lot of my inspiration for some of my work came from things like the Blue Note album covers, early 50s and 60s commercial design, things like that. So it was nice when I got into music that my appreciation of art morphed into something else. And getting back into it earlier this year, it made me realize just how much in the way of interesting choices for album covers and stuff that are actually in the jazz world. So I pulled 15 pieces from my collection, and believe me, I'd love to do more, but there's so many that I don't have, for whether it be cost reasons or just availability reasons. But I pulled 15 that are my personal favorites to share with you guys, and a little bit of information behind each one of them. So hope you enjoy this, and without further ado, let's get started. The first one is actually not a Blue Note, an Impulse, a Prestige, a Verve, etc. It's actually one that was known to have some great acts on it, but compared to like the big three or the big four, um, it gets kind of lost in the shuffle. Bill Evans, Jim Hall, Undercurrent. Let's get that gloss out of there. There we go. That's better. It's on United Artists Jazz. The first thing that catches my attention about this particular album, not even listening to a single note of the music, is it goes to show you that an image without any typography, any bold colors, etc., can still create as much of an impression as something with big bold colors and big lettering. From what I have been able to find out about this particular album cover, this was a photo that was used in National Geographic, and long and short of it, they really liked the picture. They got permission to use it, and the rest is history. I believe it was taken as part of an article about vacationing in the South during the summer, spring or summer, something like that. Anybody else that has a better idea, please comment below. I'd love to know the real story behind it. But just that simple image is all the eye-catching that needs to get your attention. Back cover, you've got the information, Undercurrent, Jim Hall, Bill Evans, followed with that other image of the reflective water. Looking at that jacket, you wouldn't know what it was, what kind of music it was. Personally, I think it would be something like easy listening, that kind of thing. And ironically enough, that's what this album sort of is. Bill Evans, for those who don't know, is a very, very famous pianist in the jazz community. He's done some amazing work. Started out on Riverside, and his career has spanned in many, many decades. But this is one of the must-haves as far as his discography is concerned. And I actually learned about this particular album through Dylan at Noble Records, and he said the same thing. He was going through a garage sale and saw this album cover and decided to buy it just purely from the album jacket. And got it home, didn't know what it was going to be, put it on, and found out it was jazz. So that goes back to what I was saying. Sometimes a simple image, an attractive image, etc., for whether it be just visually for the eyes or whatever, can still do as much, just as much of a statement than something like I said with big bold lettering and you know, big vibrant colors. Speaking of Blue Note and speaking of Reed Miles, the next one I chose is a very simple one, but it's something that Blue Note is so well known for. This is Horace Silver Quintet, Song for My Father. This was released in 1964. This is my original stereo copy that I've owned forever. I'm hoping to upgrade it because while it is a VG Plus, it's kind of on the weaker VG Plus. It's been loved. I mean, I've had this album for many, many years, and it's been very well loved and played many a time. Compared to some of the other Blue Note album covers, this one's actually quite subdued again. The image is actually a picture of Horace Silver's father, and just a simple picture of an older gentleman in the park, smoking a cigar, enjoying. It could be a Sunday afternoon, and that very simple font is more than enough to catch your attention. In fact, this was another one that I found out about just purely through browsing my used music store one day, seeing this album cover, recognizing it was Blue Note, and I knew Blue Note was jazz, but saying, to myself, huh, that's an interesting one. I'm going to have to maybe grab that one because the price was around, I think, $10. I was like, you know what, for $10, I'll give it a shot. And the rest is history. I have loved this album for a very long time. It's one of my absolute favorite jazz albums. But again, Blue Note has done many, many different things with their with the way they do their album covers. In the early days, big bold colors with both the images and the fonts. And then as time went on, they kind of did some other things. They still never strayed too far from their roots, but they tried to do a few other things. But again, this goes to show you that just a simple image and simple font, in this case, can go a long way. Just give me a second, guys. Put this guy back in there. The next one's actually on a lesser known label, Roulette Records. Now this goes into the idea of a big bold picture, big lettering, some things that honestly would catch your eye if you were walking down the aisle of a record store or a department store or whatever. It's Count Basie. I believe the title is E equals MC2, Count Basie Orchestra, plus Neil Hefty arrangements. Count Basie is obviously one of those that's a very well-known name next to Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie, etc. in the early days of jazz, as far as 50s go. But I didn't know about this particular album, and then Jason at the Jazz Basement actually picked a copy of this up earlier this year and was talking about it, and instantly the cover drew my attention. I mean, as a kid, that appreciation for cool pictures and stuff like that never left me, and I mean, that's honestly an amazing album cover. I mean, that atomic bomb going off, the big bold lettering at the top, a little bit more subdued lettering at the bottom. It scratches all the itches, if you will, or checks all the marks. And if you actually pick up this album and play it, the album cover speaks completely for the music that's on it. It's loud. It's, no pun intended, atomic. So that goes to show you that it goes down to, and I'm not trying to ramble too much, but it goes to show you that the image, the font, everything, all those little elements go into what makes the whole thing work. But this is another one that you can pick up relatively cheap, and I highly recommend it. Even if you don't like big band stuff, definitely give this one a shot. It's a great freaking album. My next pick is Felonious Monk with Sonny Rollins, Ernie Henry, and Clark Terry. Brilliant corners. This is my second pressing mono. What I love about this particular album cover is this is before the days of Photoshop, guys. I mean, now you could look at this and go, oh shit, well, I could create that in probably a few hours with Photoshop. In these days, they had to work for it. And it's basically taking different pictures of Monk and different poses and making it work to where it's one complete image. And it gives as a graphic design artist, it really makes me appreciate jackets from this particular time frame, because like I said, the amount of work that had to go into making something that's a very simple image by most people's comparisons or opinions work. So, and it's like I said, it's very simple image with a little bit of manipulation and just very simple font, but it's still, that's those little elements make this an iconic album cover. And if you go into a record store, if you know jazz, or if you appreciate, I'm sorry for the glare, guys. I'm using some new sleeves. It's another one that will just catch your attention, even with the simplicity of the font, etc. And again, I don't have to say too much about this album, but again, it's an absolute fireball of an album. The next one's actually one from Impulse, and this goes back to the use of big bold colors and big fonts, etc. This is a Sonny Rollins Alfie. This is my first pressing stereo, and this, ironically enough, because it's a soundtrack, the whole cover image gives you that feeling of you're looking at a movie poster, and I think that's what I like about it. There's a lot going on here, honestly, but it works. I mean, you've got Michael Caine's head on the top, making up the top of the eye, all the women from the movie mixed in. You know, this is very simple black fonts, making up the background and the white and the big white image to showcase everything else. Again, very simple with a little bit of artistic expansion involved in it. But again, what I love about it is the fact that it's basically like you're looking at a movie poster. And if I was walking through a record store, and I believe this would be 1965, 66, just from the jacket alone, I would pick this up and see what it was about. So there's a lot of different ways that graphics can work for album covers, whether it be just big bold colors or subdued and just a very simple image. There's a lot that can go into making something work or not work. Just one or two simple touches make all the difference in the world. The next one's actually another Blue Note, and this is actually the later part of the Blue Note catalog. This is Donald Byrd, Fancy Free. This came out in the late 60s, bordering on early 70s. This is my first pressing stereo on Liberty. Again, it starts out with a very simple image, a couple seagulls, a little bit of art added on, black and white birds, the black lettering at the top, wavy font at the bottom. And this goes back to, honestly, what Blue Note was known for, which is the very artistic covers. And this is kind of more subdued compared to some of their earlier work, but it still does the job in spades. So, I mean, this is one of those that I chose because it's blending of normal imaging and font and, the little, like I said, the little birds that were added later. The whole package is what makes the album cover, in my opinion. This next one's actually one that might be a little bit controversial, but you have to keep in the context of when the album was created. This is Ornette Coleman Crisis on Impulse. This is my first pressing stereo. This album came out in the late 60s, and the particular concert that was used for this album was recorded in New York University on March 22nd, 1969. And it goes on to explain in the actually in the liner notes what they were thinking about around the time that this was created. You factor in, race relations around around that time. The Vietnam War was still heating up. We were still a few good years from signing an agreement with the North Vietnamese to start the process of withdrawal. So the war was very much a thing, and it wasn't showing any signs of cooling down at that point. And again, you've got the peace movement at its all time loudest. Again, race relations. I mean, the fact that you've got the Bill of Rights on fire speaks everything to what this album is and what Ornette Coleman and Don Cherry, etc., were trying to say, creating this album. When you listen to it, it's very loud. You can't ignore it. And the jacket, the front of the album cover, actually speaks to a visual part of what the music is, and that's another thing about album covers that are equally as important. Is the right image makes all the difference. If you put the right image on an album, you don't even have to really explain the music because people get it. And this is a classic example of that. Next one's actually another Impulse, but again, this one's more of a simplistic cover. This is a My Fair Lady Loves Jazz, Billy Taylor Trio with Quincy Jones. This is actually a repress. I believe this one came out in like 65, 66 kind of thing. But the original album cover is, honestly, in my opinion, it's kind of bland. Whereas this one actually, it's simple enough, but the image catches your attention and the font just adds to it. You've got this really happy-go-lucky lady. Looks like might be a person going to see her boyfriend or her crush. Could be just somebody that's enjoying life. And the album jacket sets the mood for what the music is. And for me, that's one thing about Impulse that I really always loved, is that their choice of imagery and typography are right there neck and neck with Blue Note, in my opinion. And sometimes I think they do it better depending on what era you're looking at, but that's just my personal opinion. But this is one of those that you can find on the cheap. I think I got this one for like $7, $8. But we're not really talking about the music itself. We're talking about the imagery. But that's a very effective use of a solid picture and subdued but still strong type font, etc. This one's another one going back to Blue Note. This one has actually got a great little story behind it. This is a Lee Morgan Sidewinder. This image here was simply a cut. It was a small image in a roll of film that was used during the recording. And when the jacket was being made, Reed took one look at that and basically managed to find one image out of many and cut it down and say, that's the one to use. And it says a lot about the man's skill when he was able to look at the imagery that Francis Wolff took and go, nope, 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 that's the one, without even blinking at it. And it's a very effective use of imagery and typography. And this was Lee Morgan's comeback album. It's one of their biggest sellers in the Blue Note catalog. It gets constantly reissued. This is actually a Liberty pressing, stereo pressing. I had an original at one point, but it was a little bit low on the condition for me, so I went found this one. It's a near mint copy on the vinyl, and this is my forever copy unless I can find an original again and around the same shape. Continuing on the no pun intended, the Blue Train. This one is Fearsome the Phantom, featuring Bobby Hutcherson. This is one of my all-time favorite albums. This is an original near mint stereo pressing. If you subscribe to my channel, I actually did an unboxing on this particular album earlier this year. Again, very, very attractive image. The right use of font, the right coloring, everything makes this a complete product, and it's very well done. I had never actually listened to this album until I was in a store in Grand Junction and saw the Tone Poet, and it caught my attention. And like I keep coming back to, that's part of what makes an album jacket iconic, an album cover iconic, is if you do it even slightly different, without checking all the marks, you basically might end up with a really bland album jacket. Whereas this one, it's very, very simple, but it checks all the boxes, and it's a very attractive image. And that's the nice thing about this one. That's just the tip of the iceberg of this particular one. Like many of the Blue Note ones, the image brings you in, and then you buy it and you take it home, put it on your turntable, and that's when the whole thing comes full circle. Another Blue Note, back to their classic days. This is Don Wilkerson Shoutin'. Again, this is, I've stated this in an earlier video, this is one of my favorite Blue Note album covers. I love the loudness of it. I mean, that the title Shoutin's actually ironic, because I mean, if you look at that, this reminds me of some of the old sound bars on like some of the computer music systems. It's just a great example of color, font, the perfect image. It's just, it's the completed product. There's nothing that's off about it, and that's something that speaks a lot to Blue Note. It was the perfect blending of style and talent that made this label work, and still continues to make it work. My next one's actually a Prestige album. It's one of my all-time favorites from my early days into collecting music. This is Prestige 7121. It's local color Mose Allison. Very simple image with a slightly kind of, you'd probably call it like jungle green or olive green background. Very simple black font over the top. But one thing that Prestige always did, very similar to Blue Note, is they fiddled with a lot of colors, etc. Throughout their catalog. Again, very simplistic cover, but it catches your attention, and that's one of those that again I discovered this album going to a used record store and seeing it in the just-in rack, picking it up and going, you know what, price is right, I'll give this a shot. The cover caught my attention, I'll give this a shot. And was pleasantly surprised with what it was, behind the album jacket as far as the music goes. Put it on the turntable and found it was jazz, it was vocal jazz, but still jazz, and it was great stuff. So again, the cover art goes a long way. Getting down to the last couple, guys. Got 3 more. These are in no particular order. This one's an iconic one. I shouldn't even have to go into it, but again. John Coltrane, Love Supreme. This is my first stereo pressing on Impulse. It's just a very, very simple black and white image, but the whole the whole presentation is what does this album justice. When you first look at it in the record store or wherever, it's a very spiritual album. It's what you call it, spiritual jazz kind of thing. For those of you that have never heard this album, but the cover actually kind of sets it off from the get go. If you look at the picture that they've used for Coltrane here, he looks very deep in thought. You know, hashing things out, which is what a lot of people that worked with him said that he did. This particular album was actually done in one day. It says a lot about where his mind was at, and it's an iconic album cover, and it's one of those again. If you're a music fan, you see this jacket, you know exactly what it is, and that says a lot about the album itself. Another Impulse, Salt and Pepper, Sonny Paul Gonzalez. Again, I'm sorry about the glare, guys. In this case, you have a full color image, orange font, sort of a purple font at the very top. That's one thing, like I said, that Impulse was really, next to Blue Note, was really, really good at doing, was using the right imagery, the right font, and the right color to create these images. And for me, that's all it needs to be done. It's a very, it's again, very, very simple album cover, but it does the job well. You don't have to be super artistic with your vision to do the job. Sometimes it's just a simple matter of a good image, the right coloring, and the right font. And like anything with Impulse, generally, I highly recommend this one. This album's, again, I've stated it a couple times on my channel. This album is a pure fireball. The final one's actually one that, up until it was released on Tone Poet, I don't think a lot of people outside of the jazz community really knew about it. It's Curtis Amy and Dupree Bolton Katanga. What I love about this one is the choice of, I'm trying to get the glare out of there, guys. Screw it. What I love about this particular album jacket is the font's very subdued here. You know, you've got the change in color on the title, but that use of that tribal mask. You walk into a store and you see this on the shelf and go, "What the hell is that?" And it instantly brings you to wanting to pick it up and look at it to see what it is. And it's a very well done album cover, in my opinion. It's actually one of the few from the Pacific Jazz one that really stand out for me. You know, they dip their toe in trying to be artistically creative with their style on their jacket, on their album covers. But outside of a few, that's what I'm looking for. Outside of a few really solid attempts, a lot of their stuff tends to be very much the same compared to, you know, the big three. But for me, this one is one of those that always stands out for me, and it's a great album. One of their rare titles, but again, you can pick up the Tone Poet right now for about 30-35 bucks, maybe 25 if you're in the right place. But that wraps up my my top 15 favorite album jacket covers and for the jazz world. I hope you appreciate this video. If you like what you see, please click like and subscribe. And I'd love to see in the comments below what your favorite, those of you that are into jazz, what your favorite album covers are as far as the jazz world goes, whether it's a Blue Note, you know, United Artists, Prestige, Impulse, whatever. I'd love for you to comment below and tell me your favorites. But again, hope you like what you saw. Hope you like going on this journey with me. And we'll talk again soon. You guys have a good morning.